The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Oh, there's plenty of sports to get to today. Nationals. Back-to-back wins in Seattle. 9 runs in each game, though they had to get 7 in the 10th last night. Josh Bell with a 3-run homer. Knicks stay alive. Blowout win against the Pacers. Maybe we really got a series now as they head back to Indiana tomorrow night. And there's some football to talk about. Very interesting look at the embarrassment of riches. I don't know if you want to go that far, but wide receiver, running back, depth that the Commanders have not had before. Lots of options for Cliff Kingsbury and the offense. We'll get to all of that. All those are sports stories worth spending some time on today, and we will. Got a couple hours to chew on all this before we get to Bram Weinstein at 11 o'clock. But if you've listened to me over the years, you know that I say over and over again, the most interesting reading is often found in the obituary page. And when I find one that isn't necessarily a well-known person and I find interesting things in it, I will give them to you. Now, if you've studied any kind of American history, you know the name John Tyler, President of the United States of America. He left office in 1845. He was born 236 years ago, not long after George Washington became the first president of the United States of America. His grandson just died. Not his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great. No, his grandson just passed away. Now, let me put this into a little bit of perspective here. I am the grandson of Jack Pollin, who was born in 1893. So what is that? 132 years ago. And I'm sure there are millions of Americans who have linkage to the 1800s, and in his case, the late 1800s. No. This is linkage to the 1700s, and it's only 2 generations removed from that. I mean, this is outrageous. Harrison, excuse me, chokes me up. Harrison Ruffin Tyler has passed away at the age of 96. He was born in 1928. How is that possible? How is that possible that the grandson of a man who was born 236 years ago lived into the middle of 2025? How is that? How did that happen? He is the grandson, or actually he is the son of Lyon Gardner Tyler Sr., who was the longtime president of William and Mary College. So there's some famous things that are linked here as well. The father, who was the son, believe it or not, who was the son of John Tyler, born 236 years ago. His son has passed away. John Tyler Sr., born 1747, was actually a roommate of Thomas Jefferson at William and Mary. Wow. Served in the Continental Army, became governor of Virginia, had 8 children, including the future president. He was known as Old Tippecanoe. He had led the American forces that defeated Native Americans in the Battle of Tippecanoe in Indiana in 1811. And when he was a running mate of William Henry Harrison, he was attacked for that. Tippecanoe and Tyler, too, was the slogan. Harrison died of pneumonia only a month after being sworn into office in March of 1841. I guess inaugurations were done in March in those days. So he died of pneumonia only a month in. And Tyler stepped up, becoming the first former vice president to become president, took the oath of office, and took over the powers of the presidency. After leaving the presidency, he returned to the Virginia plantation where he had lived and grown up, and withdrew from politics. When the Civil War began in 1861, he sided with the Confederacy and was elected to the Confederate legislature, but he died in 1862 at the age of 71 before taking office, but not before he had had a second marriage to a woman who was 24 years old. He married her in 1844 when he was 54, so he was 34 years older. They had 13 children, And one of them was Harrison Ruffin Tyler, who has just passed away at the age of 96. Harrison Ruffin Tyler, he was working until 2000. I mean, think about that. His grandfather was president of the United States in the 1840s, and the grandson was working in 2000. He finally retired then. He'd gotten a chemical engineering degree at Virginia Tech in 1951 and then founded ChemTreat, an industrial water treatment business, which apparently he did pretty well at. I mean, you can talk about 6 degrees of separation. If you want to do only 3 degrees of separation between President 47 and President 1, you would only have to look to Harrison Ruffin Tyler, who lived to be 96. That is, to me, that's as mind-blowing an obituary as I will ever read. And, I guess he had children, so his great-grandchild would be still linked to George Washington. I mean, it just absolutely blows the mind. And then, you've got the other end of this, like Loretta Lynn became a mother at the age of 13, and I believe at 29 she became a grandmother. So that was a very short linkage there. But in this case, grandson to grandfather spanned, including when the grandfather was born, 236 years. Whew. Enough on the numbers on that. How about the numbers on this? Nationals 2-2 going to the 10th inning in Seattle last night. They explode for 7 runs, which is a franchise record for 1 inning and extra innings. I guess you have to put an asterisk next to that since you have the ghost runner to begin the inning. But regardless, Josh Bell has been struggling this year, hit a 3-run homer to ignite that. They wound up winning the game 7-3. This is the manager, Davey Martinez.
We hung in there. They came back, they tied the game. We stayed in the moment, which is huge, and then we were able to finish it off there in the last couple, last inning. So it says a lot about this group, especially the young guys. They're getting to see the taste of what it takes to win ball games, especially close games, which is great for them.
I'm not saying that this is going to be a playoff team, but to be 4 games under 500 at the end of May, not too bad. 26-30 on the season. They're going to play a weekend series in Arizona. Arizona is about where they are, 2 games under 500. They win 2 out of 3 out of that. Are they going to make a run at the division? No. Looks like Philadelphia and New York are going to battle it out for that. Atlanta got off to a terrible start, but they played a little better lately, so they may wind up getting back into the mix. But I'm not so sure that they're going to finish under 500 this year. I think that they may finish at 500 or better, and if they get to, let's say, 83 or 84 wins, then you're talking about the possibility of a playoff team. They're a long way away from that, but there's some real positive signs. And if you look at Josh Bell, he's a guy who has hit well in the past. He got off to a really bad start this year, but if he heats up a little bit, that's some real power in that lineup where you have James Wood, who has hit 15 home runs this year. That's 15 home runs in 56 games. He's already got 42 runs batted in. He's hitting .288. Last night he had another hit, drove in 2, and walked twice. He's played 135 games in the majors going back to last year. He's hit 28 home runs and has driven in 83 runs over those games. And he's going to turn 23 in September. It's way early for this. But we may look at this 3 years from now and say, would you trade James Wood for Juan Soto? Forget about the salaries, because at that point, the Nationals will still have him under control. He doesn't become a free agent, I believe, for another 5 years, maybe even 6 years. But if you look at the way his career is going, I mean, is he going to be in the conversation in the Aaron Judge mold, 3-4 years from now? He's 6'7", plays the outfield pretty well, runs the bases really well, and has power. He had another home run in that series. Actually hit 2 home runs. Had the only run in Game 1, and then hit a home run in the game before last night. At the end of May with 15 home runs and 42 runs batted in, not too shabby. Not too shabby. How about the Knicks last night? There was some question, more than some question, whether we were going to see Karl Anthony Towns because he was already playing with a bad knee. He banged knees at the end of Game 4 in Indiana, and he was a game-time decision. He delivered last night, 10 of 20 from the field. He had 24 points, and his running mate, Jalen Brunson, delivered as well, 32 points. So between the two of them, you get 56 points on their way to a 111-94 win. And not that the tables have necessarily turned here, but certainly the pressure ratchets up. It ratchets up on Indiana because they now go home tomorrow night. And if they lose that game, then you're looking at a Game 7 in Madison Square Garden, which is just going to be bonkers. Now, I would imagine the atmosphere tomorrow night in Indianapolis is going to be through the roof, and we'll have a team coming off a really lackluster effort. This was not a good game at all for Indiana. Pascal Siakam, who had 30 points in the previous game, had 15. He was 5 of 13 from the field. Most importantly, Therese Halliburton, the star of that team. I mean, that's the one guy on that team you would say is a star. He was 2 of 7 for 8 points. He took only 7 shots. This is a guy who had a near-perfect game the other night where he had 34 points and 15 rebounds and 10 assists. I mean, a triple-double as good as you can do it. Like Tim Legler said, if it was a quarterback, it would be a perfect rating, which is, I think, is 158.3. And to come up as small as he did in that game, that's worth taking a look at, which Scott Van Pelt and Tim Legler did last night.
Maybe this is semantics, and maybe this is a conversation more suited for shows in the morning where the conversation is about is a guy this or that. It's not really what we do here as much, but I'm interested in this as it relates to Halliburton. I'm saying the guy's a star, okay? He's an all-star starter. Last game, we raved about what the man did because, as you say, he deserved that conversation. 2 for 7 tonight.
Yeah.
8 points. I feel like we've had a lot of that throughout the playoffs. Nights where you and I are wondering, why didn't Jimmy Butler shoot the ball more? Yeah. No Steph Curry. Why didn't Ant shoot the ball more, right? I'm wondering what this night is from Halliburton because his ability to exert pressure and influence the outcome is obvious. But this game feels real quiet, and I'm wondering why that is.
Man, I mean, could you have a bigger contrast for 2 games?
That's what I'm asking.
For a player. I mean, the way we were talking about him the other night, and he deserved all of that, the game that he had in Game 4. He comes out tonight, I almost felt like he was over-analyzing what the Knicks were about to do to him. So as a result, he came out kind of passive. Well, I know they're going to be prepared for me tonight, and I just don't think great players, superstars, and we talk about that a lot. I don't use that word very often.
That's the top shelf of the top shelf.
Because that's every night, Scott.
Understood.
Those guys are every night. And look, Tyrese Halliburton over the last few months, it's been damn near every night, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's every night. And tonight, I just thought he was overly passive. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying he was rattled or anything. He doesn't seem like that type of guy. But it was strange to me that you're a quarter and a half into the game. The Knicks are building a double-digit lead, playing their style. And at that point, he had taken 2 shots. It's just strange because he almost like he made up his mind, I'm going to play differently tonight because they're going to defend me differently.
Because when it comes to superstars, a superstar doesn't go 2 for 7 in a potential closeout game in a building where he's been great. You're talking about the very best of the best, and that's reserved for a handful of players. Yeah. And Halliburton's level of play throughout this run is certainly putting him in that conversation. But a night like tonight feels like a head-scratcher. You do have the ability to go home. You got a Game 6 in your pocket, but you can't mess with that. The Knicks have been great on the road. Let's pivot towards that. I think it'll turn into a conversation. It's like, boy, they better win or else. Yeah. If I'm Indiana, I go, or else what? Right. We won there twice already. Yeah, we won in Cleveland a couple times. I'm not worried about going back to your building.
Game 7 seemed more winnable than they used to be on the road, but, obviously you don't want to get to that point.
So let's talk about Game 6. Okay. Just in terms of Game 6, if you're Indiana and you watched New York come with an intent and a game plan, which they executed, your intent on your home floor on Saturday would be what?
I could easily put together a tape, and Rick Carlisle probably do the same thing. You give me 20 of those one-on-one blow-bys in the first half, because there was 20 of them. I bet you by my count. It wasn't just Karl Anthony Towns, who played great force tonight, was not settling for three-point shots. It was Josh Hart. It was Brunson. It was OG Anunoby. They physically overwhelmed them. So just Put a clip of those together, sit guys down in the film room and go, watch this. Is this good enough in your one-on-ones for ball containment? Because we were getting beat every time off the dribble. I don't think the guys stepping in were willing to do that tonight.
Olé.
So here you go. I mean, look, their identity is more offensively than defensively. We know that. But the reason their offense was not able to, really get into full throttle was because of the way that they were just under assault in the paint.
Yeah.
The entire 60 points in the paint. They had 34 more points, I believe, or 36 more points in the paint than at the three-point line. That's incredible by today's NBA standards.
One more note from the box. Indiana was the best shooting team in the playoffs coming into tonight. They shot 40%. That's 10% lower than they've shot throughout the bulk of the playoffs. On their home floor, with that building probably not as desperate as the Garden was tonight, but they're ready to go. You expect to see a different Indiana team?
That's a great counter punch you saw tonight out of the Knicks.
I agree.
And they feel like now, like they're right there. Right? Go win a road game. Get this thing back to the Garden. Pacers, they're going to have to go watch that film from the other night and get back to that tempo, particularly Halliburton. He was a different player tonight.
Now, you did have Pascal Siakam say that they were outplayed, that the other team played harder. Siakam did not perform anywhere near the way he did. In game number 4, he finished with, what did he have last night? He had 15 points, but he had 30 in the last game, just 5 of 13 from the field. And this brings us to the name Greg Doyle. Greg Doyle may ring a bell if you're a big-time Maryland sports fan, as I am. And this goes back to 2011 when Greg Doyle was writing for CBS Sports. And remember when Debbie Yao hired Mark Gottfried? She had just left Maryland. Gary Williams outlasted her a year. They hated each other. She inherited him as the head coach. He hired everybody else, and he was a great coach, Hall of Fame coach, won a national championship, back-to-back Final Four. She knew she couldn't mess with him, but she did not like him. He did not like her. And she suggested, this is a great way to hire a coach. She suggested that Gary Williams sabotage their coaching search. In other words, insinuating that, you don't want to work for Debbie Yao. She's somebody you don't want to be associated with, where there's no evidence of that. And it was just a ridiculous thing to say. And on top of that, you're telling the media, we had to settle for Mark Gottfried because Gary Williams told all the good coaches not to come here. He said that, of course, was ridiculous, and it was ridiculous. And then here's where Greg Doyle comes in. He sides with Debbie Yao on this and called Gary Williams a spineless little fraction of a man because he didn't return his phone call, and said that the media had a bad relationship with Gary, which couldn't be further from the truth. Just absolutely idiotic. And he later apologized for that. He said that he jumped the gun there and got, his nose out of joint, essentially because Gary didn't call him back. Well, Greg Doyle is now with the Indianapolis Star. And the one thing that you learn in journalism school is don't make yourself the story. Well, Greg Doyle seems intent on doing that, as he did in 2011. Attacking Gary Williams ridiculously without evidence of anything just because he didn't return his phone call. And last night, as Pascal Siakam of the Pacers is talking to the media, he says that the Knicks played harder. And Doyle says, well, how is that possible? Which leads to this little exchange between Pascal Siakam and Greg Doyle.
What are you talking about? They played harder than us. It's okay. We played hard, but they played harder. What's your point? I don't get it.
My point is you're saying you guys got out-fought, and I'm saying...
That happens in the game, though. That's basketball.
In game 5, you didn't make the playoffs?
You're good? You're good, bro? You're looking for something, I know, but damn. No, but I'm telling you, though. I told you. What else you want me to tell you?
I want you to tell me how. That's all I'm asking.
Well, what about you telling me? So go ahead. Who's this guy? What's your name, bro?
Oh, yeah. Maybe you should have known. Stop. Enough. You don't have to make yourself the story, as he did last year. Remember the name Greg Doyle associated with Caitlin Clark of the Indiana Fever? When they had a news conference to maybe just to introduce her, or it was one of the games or whatever. But he had a very creepy exchange with her He made the heart gesture with his hands that she does to her family in the stands and said, "Start doing it to me and we'll get along just fine." Ooh. The paper suspended him for 2 weeks, and he was banned from covering Indiana Fever games. Enough already. Don't make yourself the story. Maybe Stephen A. Smith can get away with that at ESPN, but you're not Stephen A. Smith. You're just a guy who writes columns for the Indianapolis Star and trying to make yourself the story in something like this. He said, we were outplayed. They played harder. It was anybody watching the game could have seen that. That happens in a long series. That can happen. They're coming off a great performance. They had a letdown. The Knicks were playing for their season. They outplayed them. Deal with it. And how can that happen? We didn't play as hard as we should have, Greg. What else do you need to say about that? Do you need to say, we took them lightly? Maybe they did. Do you have to have that information? Again, making yourself the story, and Greg Doyle seems intent on doing that. Hey, we got some football to get to. What Frankie Luvu said the other day at the off-season workouts about the decision to keep the tush-push in place. And also Jeff Garland, big-time Bears fan, sounds off on the Caleb Williams controversy. That and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
It is hard to believe that Terry McLaurin is going into his 8th year here in Washington. Yeah, he's been here since, since before Ron Rivera got here. And that seems like a distant memory of what happened last season. Jay Gruden was the coach only for the first 5 games of his career, and then he got fired. And Terry McLaurin has been a great soldier here. He's not participating in this week's off-season workouts. They're voluntary. He has the right to not show up, and he wants his contract to be extended, which they're working on. He's got 1 year left on it. But the big picture with Terry McLaurin is, as terrific as he's been, he just hasn't had the help. I mean, we've spent years saying, what if we had a top guy on the other side? What a difference it would make. And last year, he did have some pretty good help with a really good offense, and most importantly, an outstanding quarterback. And he played with I think it was over a dozen different starters in the first 6 years of his career. And finally, he got to play with a quality quarterback who started every game. And when he didn't play, Marcus Mariota played, and he was solid as anybody he'd had in those first 6 years of his career. Well, now Terry McLaurin and that offense has, I don't want to say an embarrassment of riches, but they've got a lot of other options here. And a very interesting story by Sam Fortier in the Post today. And he says that historical data suggests that the Commanders will take about 1,100 offensive snaps over the course of the season. There will probably be more passes than runs. In what's known as a score-neutral situation, when the clock and the scoreboard don't dictate pass or run, it's not like 3rd and long or anything like that. Cliff Kingsbury has called passes on about 56% of plays last season, which was the 8th highest rate in the league. While the Commanders could run more if they get better, and, of course, if you have a lead, you're going to run more as well. But it's safe to say that they're going to continue to throw the football. So he says, if last season is a guide, there should be about 620 passing snaps in 2025. The top priority will be star wide receiver Terry McLaurin, who's averaged about 125 targets over the past 4 seasons, and quarterback Jaden Daniels, who's an elite scrambler and will inevitably take some sacks too. If he sustains last year's pace and remains healthy, Daniels probably will scramble about 75 times and take about 45 sacks. That seems high, but when you play the position like he does, maybe you can live with 45 sacks over 17 games. Kingsbury seems likely to maintain that heavy diet of touches that Deebo Samuels got in San Francisco, assuming the 29-year-old is in peak shape. And Samuels did say that he spent the offseason getting himself into top shape. He's ranked in the top 15 in the NFL for touches among wideouts in each of the past 4 seasons, averaging about 95 targets and 45 carries. He's also played some running back. He probably will be a huge boost on short passes. He excels at picking up yards after the catch and could make up most of roughly 100 targets lost by free agency departures of Olamide Zaccheaus and De'Ami Brown. Overall, it seems likely Daniels, McLaurin, and Samuels will account for a little more than half of these 620 passing snaps, which brings us to the question of, well, how do you keep everybody happy? This was Kingsbury addressing that the other day.
I've never had a great player that didn't want the ball, and so that kind of comes with the territory. But that's one thing I think that DQ has created where it's, the team above anything else. And these guys that had their success last year and got their touches, they know bringing Debo in, there's going to be less, but we're going to be better. And I think when they're able to sacrifice for that and understand that the ultimate goal is winning, then, it all works itself out. But you want those guys. I mean, they're going to be pissed. I'll get cussed out a few games, but it just comes with the territory. You'd rather have really good players cussing you out than bad players cussing you out. So.
And then, when you look at the receiver room, obviously with Terry, Debo, and now Jalen to go with Luke and some other guys, do you feel like they're more interchangeable, that you could play them at all the same positions if need be?
We're working towards that. And Noah Brown being back, I thought was huge to get him back. We got to get him healthy, but a lot of guys who understand the system now, played at a really high level, played great in critical situations last year, and so that'll help the young guys come along. But most of those guys can play their inside or out, which is really what you're hopeful of.
Yeah, and that's only the wide receivers. You're talking about running backs, too. Austin Eckler had 41 targets last year. Brian Robinson, 25. And the other receivers, Noah Brown, he was essentially the number 2 last year before he got hurt, making the play of the season with the Hail Mary catch. So I guess that what Kingsbury's saying is that's a nice problem to have. If I got a bunch of guys angry at me because I'm not getting the ball enough, I'll deal with that. I'm okay with that. I'll be able to handle it. He's a former quarterback. He did play briefly in the NFL, but was a record-setting quarterback in Texas Tech back in the day. Other follow-up from the other day, Frankie Luvu, who went on Good Morning Football a couple of weeks ago and said that he wanted to have the tush-push banned. I guess Luvu has gotten more attention for this play, trying to defend it, than anybody else. Jumping over the pile as he did in the championship game. And now that it's going to stay, a narrow vote, but they voted to keep it at the owners' meetings last week. This is Luvu's reaction to that.
I'm just going to stand on, man. We just got to stop it. You know what I mean? Like, I said what I said, but I just feel like, at this point, we just going to, whatever tush push show, we just got to stop it. And I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to stay on that.
What do you think about the memes of when you're jumping over the line? Do you like them?
Man, social media undefeated, huh? I mean, it's cool me leaping over, but the ball wasn't snapping and whatnot. But yeah, man, it's all over, and I can't. It's out there, so it is what it is.
Yeah, and look, the coaching staff led by Dan Quinn says, no, you keep it in there. We'll figure out a way to stop it. And it was Quinn who came up with this Frankie Luvu wrinkle jumping over the pile. He's had the whole offseason to think about what else he can do on that. So let's see what happens when they roll out the Philadelphia Eagles this season. Let's see how they try to defend the tush push. And the best way to defend the tush push, don't let the Eagles get the ball down around the 1-yard line, right? Keep them out of the end zone, keep them putting the football, and then you don't have to worry about it. A little bit else from the other day, Tyler Biadasz, the center. Back in the day when the Redskins were really great, who the best talkers were? The offensive line. Yeah, and all of them had media careers. Mark May went on to a long run with ESPN. I did years and years of shows with Joe Jacoby. He did a bunch of outlets. Jeff Bostic did a lot of radio and TV and things like that. These guys were always, I think, the most insightful players on the team. That was the constant of the 3 Super Bowls. The quarterbacks changed, the running backs changed, but the offensive line stayed the same. Sounds like if you listen to Tyler Biadasz, he's kind of taken over that role, the center, good center, and he is obviously very good with the media, talking about everybody's favorite subject, Jaden Daniels.
He's growing for sure. Every single day that guy grows. and he keeps raising the bar for himself and for the team. And his leadership has been awesome throughout. And no, it's been really great.
Hey, Tyler, good to see you. Speaking of him growing, looks like he maybe put on an extra little weight.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And that's to it. He said what he was going to do, and he did it. So I mean, but no, I mean, just as a leadership too, just how he leads by example on the field, but also in the weight room too, like how he's doing his workouts in the morning, and but just setting the tone early. He's a big early bird. So, but no, it's been great for what he's done. Obviously coming off last year, but also just in the great trajectory going into this year for sure.
But what goes through your mind when you see a trade for Tunsil and then a first-round pick for a tackle? What is that going to do for you, for the line overall?
Yeah, I mean, personally, like, just again, like I said before, just getting him up to speed. But just great. I mean, obviously Tunsil's having his career to this point. It's been great just to, talk to him about just ball too. And but whether it be get up to speed, but also again like just building that chemistry just during this OTA stretch, so we can amplify it into August during camp or July during camp, and but also too just we have a lot of shifts going on too inside, and so it's been awesome to just vibe with those guys and see where we're at right now, and just keep on raising the bar now, so we can go into camp flying.
Tyler Biadasz, the center for the Commanders, who had a really good year last year after coming over from Dallas. The story that's been percolating the NFL for the last couple of weeks was an excerpt from a book written by Seth Wickersham about the quarterback position, and the juicy part about Caleb Williams and his dad thinking about conspiring to make sure that he didn't go to a team where quarterbacks go to die. I mean, that's fact. They've had a Hall of Fame quarterback in Sid Luckman and a really good quarterback, not great, in Jim McMahon. That's it for the entire history of the team, which goes back to 1920. They were one of the original teams with George Halas. So you think about over 100 years, 105 years, and they've had two really good quarterbacks. And Caleb Williams had a really good rookie year, 20 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, 3,500 yards. That's a good year. He took 68 sacks. That's not good, but he's hardly a bust. But this was, this was buzz like, hey, Dad said he'd take the bullet and say, I'm doing this. And they even talked about playing in the UFL for a year and trying to become a free agent after that. But ultimately, he decided to play with the Bears. He did say that nobody showed him how to watch film. He kind of backtracked on that. We'll get to that in a moment. But there were a lot of people who said, oh, my God, look at this entitled guy. And then there's Chicago superfan Jeff Garland from Curb Your Enthusiasm. He was on the Rich Eisen show yesterday wearing his Chicago Cubs jersey and blasting this out about the whole Caleb Williams situation.
Because this has got me crazy. So he said what he said. His father said what he said.
Right.
It's not only true what they said,
yes.
It's 900 million% true. And we've had we had one great quarterback and one great for a short period, Jim McMahon and Sid Luckman.
Mm-hmm.
For a franchise like the Bears,
yeah.
That's insanity.
Yes.
That's insanity.
Agreed.
And that is where quarterbacks go to die. I've seen them all die. Caleb Williams is a dream. Caleb Williams watching film alone by himself. And by the way, Shane Waldron's your offensive coordinator. Okay. I don't even want to get into the head coach.
So he not only was right, he was proven right.
No, but
later on.
But not only proven right, he was right when I heard the dad say that, and I thought, oh, we got to get him. Please don't,
Right.
And, try and wiggle your way in a Manning way out of it. But he came, and now it's looking like a great choice.
Correct.
But Eberflus knows so much about the quarterback position. And did you watch the what's that show on HBO?
Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks. Did you watch the Bears Hard Knocks?
On occasion, I did. Yes.
Unequivocally, I'm a Bears fan. The most boring Hard Knocks. It was like dig into Eberflus's personality, and then he would meet with Caleb Williams to discuss what he was doing right or wrong. And Caleb Williams was sober. Yes, sir. And I go, this kid's gonna die. This kid is just, he's doing his best to dive into the crappiest situation. Nothing was said about the other players on the team. Nothing was said about the quality of the defense or the offense.
Right.
Quarterback specific. So the fact that any Bear fan, any real true Bear fan who knows what they're talking about, you can see I'm passionate,
yes,
agrees with it 100%. And I just think that, come on. It's infuriating that, like, what are the Bear fans going to do? What's the press? The fact that they even ask questions. What do you think about what your father, like, he hasn't done a press conference yet, but it's like, what is the coach going to say? He's laughing about it. He can't say that the previous regime sucked. He can't do that.
No, and he won't, because he didn't do it at all last year, which is, again, to his credit, that we learned about it live on the air. We were reading the story live on the air and reacting to it live on the air. And my first thought was like, Bears fans will not like hearing this about their organization. Then midway through, I'm like, well, actually, this is what they've been saying about their own organization.
Well, I don't know Bear fans.
They're echoing it. He's echoing it back. And then was proven correct by the circumstances of the season. And not once while he was getting his ass beat did he make mention whatsoever about any of his reservations.
No, he held it with class. To the draft. He was a pro. He was a pro. Agreed. His rookie season, the guy was a pro.
He got his ass beaten.
My God.
But now they do seem to have the right coach. They really do.
No,
we haven't seen it yet.
No. It's, and what they added with the offense, and I agree with you, Loveland's going to be a monster.
Dude.
And they already had a great tight end, so it's going to be...
The two tight ends are going to be really good friends for him, certainly as he goes through
and
his progressions.
And we got that Luther Perkins later. I call him that Luther Perkins, right. as if he has his own comedy show. That Luther Perkins... It'd be great if he was funny.
Yeah. I don't think they have shows like that anymore. That Luther Perkins, that girl, and that was back in the 1960s. We had shows like that. But yeah, that Luther Perkins, that might be a real hit. If you missed what Caleb Williams said the other day, he had his first news conference since the book came out, and he kind of laughed a little bit about the film stuff. He said he knew how to watch film. He just thought that he needed a little more guidance on that. Okay, I mean, it's hard to believe that a guy would come into pro football and if he didn't know how to watch film, that somebody would have shown him how to do it. So he kind of backtracked on this, but this is generally the direction he was going. Kind of looking to spackle things over after the big controversy.
Through all of what was going on, through all of what happened in last year and previous years, I think that was enticing. I think that was something that was glaring to me, that I wanted to come here and be the guy and be a part and be a reason on why Chicago Bears turn this thing around. So that last thing that was said and all of that, I think, was the most important thing, is that I wanted to be here, that I love being here, I love my teammates, I love all the people that got me here, family, friends, Ryan, Kevin, Floos and Shane, all those guys that went through all of that process with me to get me here. But it was all those things, like I said, were thoughts. But the main goal and the main objective of being here is to turn around. That's why I was selected number one. And so, that's what we're here to do. That's what they brought me here to do. That's what they brought all these guys here to do. Joe, DJ, all these different guys. And that's why they brought Ben here. And so, like I said, it's a challenge. And we look at those challenges and, we don't laugh. We look at them really, really seriously. And, we go attack them, to the best of our ability to go and change it and turn it around.
That's Caleb Williams with a fresh start, new coach, the whole Megillah with the Chicago Bears. We'll see how that works out. Coming up, more follow-up on the Knicks' win last night. Also, Tim Legler tells a really good Larry Bird story. It was 45 years ago yesterday that Larry Bird was named Rookie of the Year, beating out a fellow by the name of Magic Johnson, who had led the Los Angeles Lakers, or would lead the Los Angeles Lakers, to the NBA championship. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Reunited, and it looks so kind of strange, right? Over 30 years after the famous Reggie Miller Spike Lee incident at Madison Square Garden, they sat together at the Garden last night and chatted it up with the TNT crew. We will get to that. Tim Legler tells a really good story about Larry Bird, who 45 years ago yesterday was named Rookie of the Year. Time has flown on that and other things. And Tom Libero's got something very interesting about this stadium deal, which looks like it's going to happen, but we're roughly 6 weeks away from a deadline for the city council to approve the deal. Now, that deadline is likely to be extended, and it's 5 years away, the stadium being opened, if this deal does go through. So there's time on this, but Tom has been one, and there have been others, but Tom was one looking at the way the landscape was going and saying, well, more than likely, they're going to have to wind up building the stadium at the Landover site. It's just too many things to go through in D.C. Virginia was never going to be a factor in this, and Maryland is always a fallback position, and it's very easy for the Commanders to build there since they own the land, and the state of Maryland is kicking in $400 million for infrastructure if they want to do it. So it would be very easy, but nobody wants that to happen. People in Maryland don't want that to happen. Most people want it to happen in the District of Columbia, and there are people who are against this and don't want taxpayer dollars to fund the stadium, even though it's going to be roughly a fourth of the total cost. But Libero's got an angle here which tells you that this could be very, very good for the owners of the team if this deal goes through, even though they're set to pay 3/4 of the cost plus the overruns, not just the $2.7 billion in addition to what the city will pay, $1 billion according to this deal. But if it goes over in cost, which it will, because, things always cost more and there's always delays, problems, whatever, and plus inflation, all those things add into this. But here's why the owners really want this to happen. In addition to, and I believe them, that they want this for the good of the city. I think, these are guys who all grew up here and they understand what it means to the city to have the team there. But he looks at the chart, Tom does, that they put up in terms of what the city was paying versus what the team was paying. And it highlighted that the Tennessee Titans got a 60% pledge of public funds for their stadium. Here we're getting 25. Buffalo's current project with the Bills, 49%. Jacksonville's new facility for the Jaguars, 50%. New Orleans taxpayers for the bill and improvements from last year, 67%. That's not a new stadium, but that's a Superdome. And the public investment as a percentage of the stadium in parking and development costs for the Raiders, 37%. Next to those numbers, the district's commitment seems like a great deal, right? And instead of paying as much as 60% as is the case in Nashville, they'd be paying 25%. But here's one footnote district officials failed to include. None of those stadium projects the mayor trotted out in her comparison chart to pitch her plan, including handing over prime real estate for the football team to develop and then pocket the profits. That's what the district is giving the Commanders. An undisclosed number of valuable acres owned by the federal government but leased by the city in a 99-year agreement approved in the final minutes of last year's congressional session. So whatever is built on that land is probably not going to last 99 years, and the Commanders would have the ability to build restaurants, hotels, entertainment, housing, all that stuff. And how much land is that? According to what Tom has in talking to various real estate people, you're talking close to 100 acres, and that's worth about $400 million now, and if fully developed, could generate as much as $2 billion in revenue. Look, these are businessmen. They're not in the business of losing money, and this is going to be good for them, but it would also be good for the city. I'm in favor of it. I know not everybody is, and there's pushback on it, and there's a lot of dancing going on between the city council and constituents and so forth and so on. But this is going to happen. The big thing is that the team is going to benefit. You go, wow, look at that. Look at all the money they're laying out. Yes, they are laying out a lot of money, and they will eventually get that back. These are high-level business people. Josh Harris, this is the third team that he owns. He's done incredibly well. Mitch Rales, same thing. And Mark Ein, these guys are are developers. These are people who invest and make money. That's what they're good at. So that's just another angle to this, and I don't see it as a negative. I don't, but it also explains a lot of things in why they want this deal to go through. So last night, what looked like was going to be disaster for the Knicks because they not only had been totally outplayed in really all 4 games previously in the series. Even though they managed to win one of the games, I mean, Indiana just fell asleep. They were up 20 points, and we're thinking, hey, 3-0, this baby's over. And the Knicks came back and won. But Game 4, Indiana was great. I mean, they were just terrific in that game, and you had a near-perfect performance by Therese Halliburton, no turnovers, 34 points, 15 rebounds. That's almost a perfect game for a point guard. He did not have a perfect game last night. That was part of the picture. He's only 2 for 7 from the field for 8 points. But I think the big thing for the Knicks was Karl Anthony Towns, who was a game-time decision. He was playing on a bad knee anyway and then bumped knees late in the game in Game 4. And there was great question whether he's going to play last night. And if he played, how good would he be? Well, he was terrific. He was 10 of 20 from the field. He had 24 points. He dominated the inside as the Pacers' shooting was terrible. They shot 40%, played good defense, and they got another big game out of Jalen Brunson, who's had some struggles, but he had 32 points. So they got scoring from their big 2, but Towns really shined last night and then showed up on the set with the TNT crew with Kenny and Barkley and Shaq and Ernie.
It don't matter. You got to get the job done.
Tell me this, regular season, game in February, you playing on it?
I always try to play. So I don't know, but nothing really came across my mind that I was going to miss this game. It's Game 5. It's do or die. So definitely want to show up.
We know you're a versatile big man. Also know you from Jersey. Me and Charles were always on you about going inside outside. When do you make the determination in the game? I mean, 'cause listen, you're a fabulous three-point shooter, but when do you make the determination, you know what, I'm not going to shoot the outside jumper. I'm going inside and playing with force tonight.
You know, I'm glad you said that. I feel like in this series, I've been having a lot of success getting downhill and getting to the rim. So like you said, I can shoot the 3 ball, but I really wanted to get downhill, pose my will early on inside, and then as the game progressed, when I get an open 3 and trail or like that, maybe I'll take it. But especially if I'm trailing in and the defender comes up, I have the ability to drive to the basket. I'd rather utilize it.
Listen, what did because obviously New York is a unique place.
Yeah.
Because you live here, man, you can't watch TV. You definitely can't listen to the radio. What were you guys first of all, on the trip back from Indy?
Yeah.
And in the last 48 hours, what were y'all private conversations?
It was just, why not us? I feel that we all felt that we could do this. We've shown that resiliency all year, especially in the playoffs. So for us, it was just like, why not us? Like, why not go out there and take it game by game, obviously, but, let's worry about the next game. And Game 5's the next game. Let's get that one. Then let's worry about Game 6 after Game 5, and then, and then we'll worry about Game 7 after Game 6. But, we got to take it game by game, stay in the present.
You look at this call, yourself and Jalen was on that list with the greatest players that ever played the game. But to me also, there was some guys that haven't gotten any spotlight that really did the job. When they come into the game, Shamet, Wright.
How great have they been?
They have been, I don't know if pay attention to it, but they have been a plus. The only guys in this series who have a plus are the guys coming off the bench.
Yeah.
What has been their message when they weren't playing?
The thing about it is locker room has a bunch of professionals. Everyone's a professional in there. Everyone's just ready for their moment. You never know when your name's going to be called. You never know when Tibbs is going to look at you and say, go in. So we, all those guys are just professionals. They work hard every single day, and they're ready when their name is called.
Underdog just told me.
Underdog is our stat guy, by the way.
Everybody knows that, Ernie.
Yeah, okay.
26 points were y'all playoff high off the bench.
Yeah.
I mean, when he actually plays y'all bench, they're pretty damn good, huh?
I think everyone in that locker room is good. So, like I said, when they're just ready when their name is called.
Hey, Kat, Halliburton coming off this historic triple-double the other night. So when you talked about how are we going to try to negate this guy because he's been their engine, what was the plan going in tonight?
Just make it difficult for him. I thought we did a better job today of making it difficult for him to get those open looks and to get going. And as you see right now on the screen, we're just doing a great job of applying pressure and making sure that every time he's looking to score, he's seeing bodies, he's seeing people. We're not allowing him to have space to, utilize his talent. Mikal does a great job right there. So just a great job tonight of executing the game plan.
So you're going back to Indiana. Of course, they're going to try to push the pace. Of course, they're going to try to make some adjustments. How are you guys going to slow them down, and what's the game plan, and what's the message?
I mean, first off, regardless of them changing a game plan, us, changing our game plan, and obviously doing different things, it has to start off with that desperation that we started with tonight. I thought that we did a great job coming out the gates off the jump ball 0-0 and applying pressure and having that energy that's needed, especially in a do-or-die game. So that's a shout out to us. We got to start with that, and then we'll worry about the game plan adjustments later.
Well, I got to say something now. I got to criticize you. Yeah, man, why do you be getting them dumb fouls? I was going to ask the same question. Why do you do that?
God only knows.
I mean, because, when you got your fourth foul, they took you out. They made a run.
Yeah.
You got to stop doing that.
I got to do a much better job.
Yes.
I got to do a much better job.
You can get fouls, but a couple, like the other day when you just grabbed somebody by the wrist.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Or you talking about last game or this game?
Last game. Every game.
Oh, you talking about the one with the pick and roll?
Every game.
Smith?
You just grabbed his arm.
Yeah.
But you can't be getting those fouls.
I can't. You ain't wrong. You ain't wrong. I hurts our team. But again, I want to give a shout out to the bench and the guys, Achua, everyone who comes in and they hold it down, even when making these mistakes. I got to fix that, though.
That's Karl Anthony Towns with the TNT crew. 24 points last night in the Knicks blowout win. They won by 17 points. So they will play Game 6 tomorrow night in Indianapolis. If the Knicks win, that sets up Game 7 on Monday night at Madison Square Garden, and the winner of that would go to Oklahoma City to start the playoffs on Thursday. I don't think either way the rust is going to be a big deal, whichever team gets there, or rest, I should say, because you got Oklahoma City. They will be more than rested, and then we're going to get in the whole rust conversation about them since they wrapped things up the other night. They will have been off 9 days before they play, but even if it goes 7, you got 3 days before you start. So, and that may work to an advantage because you'll both be rested and sharp, whereas the Oklahoma City's got to find a way to stay sharp. But they're both, all three are really pretty young teams. I guess the Knicks would be the oldest of the bunch. But the concern right now is Therese Halliburton. In that he scores over 20 points a game and wins in this postseason, and just 11 points in losses. And last night, 2 for 7, 8 points. That can't happen if the Pacers are going to win this series, and I think he realizes that. Anyway, before the game, an interesting reunion. This goes back to 1994. This was in the Eastern Conference Finals. It was the Indiana Pacers with Reggie Miller, young player who was like 7 or 8 years into the league, and Spike Lee still sitting courtside all those years ago. He actually had hair in those days. And it comes to Game 5, and this is not the game where Reggie dumped like 9 points in 8 seconds in that crazy game. That was a year later. This is the year before, Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Reggie Miller finished with 39 points, 25 in the fourth quarter in a 93-86 win, and then gave the choke sign to Spike Lee, who was sitting courtside because Spike had been jawing at him the whole game. So before the game at Madison Square Garden, Spike still got his courtside seats. Reggie's now doing TV for TNT. He was there with the whole gang, and they had Spike with him wearing this absolutely ridiculous-looking orange and blue striped suit. And here was their little reunion as they got together at center court in Madison Square Garden.
Who was the instigator in that relationship? Spike. Wait, time out, meaning were you just being a fan cheering, and you were just being an agitator?
Now,
what was it? Who was it?
I was having a bad game. I was having a bad game that game, Game 5, right? until you opened your mouth and started
Blame it on me, right?
Instead of you and all your compadres around you.
Nah, don't put other people in. It was me.
Okay.
They're trying to fix it up, man.
He started it all, Kenny.
Okay, he was the instigator.
And that's how it was born. Like
Okay.
that. I was content.
I didn't know. You're leaving something out, though.
Yeah.
Game 1, you said, Spike, I want you to go on the local TV back to Indiana. Remember that? And we made a bet. Right?
The Mike Tyson bet. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the bet was I forgot to do it for you, but he had to go visit Mike Tyson.
My thin wife.
Right.
My thin wife.
Yeah.
Wanted to be in the movies.
Be in one of your movies.
Yeah.
Or if the Pacers lost, go visit Mike.
Have you ever visited him?
I did. But he never came out to see me. I was there for 3 hours in the waiting room.
You know what he said?
3 hours.
He's like, he was in jail going, Reggie Miller, no, I'll stay in here. I'll stay in here. I'll stay in jail.
Waiting for you.
I'd rather be in jail.
Come on and see me.
New York to the end.
Let me
New
say
York
this.
to the end.
Every time I see John Starks, I give him a hug. Because I would have had to move. Hey. After that game, the next day, I'm on the front page. You took a picture of me. I'm on the front page of Daily News.
And that's my second favorite line. They blamed it on me.
It wasn't
the Post and New York Newsday,
blamed it
front
on me.
and back.
Oh, that's funny, man. You know, every
I
time
had to go.
I had never heard that story before. So the bet was, again, this is Game 5. The Knicks came back, won the next 2. They went to the finals. They lost to Houston in 7. That was the series that included the O.J. chase. Remember that? June 17th, where nobody was watching the game. Everybody was watching the O.J. chase, and you couldn't watch it on your phones in those days. So people who were watching the game at Madison Square Garden went up to the concourse so they could see it on TV. And NBC, which was showing the game, had to go to a split screen. Put the game on one side and the O.J. chase on the other. I mean, it was just nuts. But the chance to get there was this Eastern Conference Finals and Game 5. So the bet was if the Pacers went on to win that series after winning Game 5, then Spike Lee would have to put Reggie's then wife in a movie. If the Pacers lost the series, which they did, Reggie would have to go visit Mike Tyson. I don't know how they came up with that, but Mike Tyson at the time was in jail. He was in jail for the rape of a woman in a beauty contest at a hotel he was staying at in Indianapolis some years earlier. So, if this is true, Reggie went to see him in prison. Mike never came out to see him. Tyson had to know who Reggie Miller was, and for whatever reason, that didn't happen. I guess all of it's true. If it's not, it makes a hell of a story. And they've made 30 for 30s about the game, the night that Reggie had when he scored all those points, kept running behind the three-point line. This would make a great one. There's a lot of meat on that bone there. That's interesting. I'd never heard that before. But that was last night at Madison Square Garden with Reggie Miller and Spike Lee reunited. Tim Legler, on the fame scale, has gotten most of his as a broadcaster. He's terrific breaking down games. He's excellent at that. And has a background as a great college player at LaSalle and a guy who stuck with it in the NBA and found his place as a three-point shooter. And I would say, I don't think he'd argue with this, the highlight of his NBA career was winning the three-point shootout at the All-Star Game in 1996. He's a guy who was undrafted, bounced around, had to play in the CBA for a number of years, wound up with Dallas, and then came to Washington about then, 95, 96, something like that. He was maybe that was his first year with the team when he won the three-point shootout. He hurt his knee, which shortened his career, so he wound up playing 6 or 7 years, but he was an excellent three-point shooter. That was his thing, and he would come off the bench and give you 12 minutes of great shooting, and he says he can still shoot. He just, age and knee is what ultimately ended his career. But he because it took him a while to get established in the league, back and forth CBA, he didn't really get a chance to play against Larry Bird. But he said on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday that Larry Bird was really the reason that he concentrated on basketball. Tim Legler was a hell of an athlete. He got drafted in baseball and was going to play baseball in hopes of getting to the major leagues until he got to high school, and that's when he decided that he was really going to concentrate on playing basketball. Basketball was going to be his thing. He said when Bird came into the league as a rookie, that was his freshman year of high school. So as he followed Larry Bird in the NBA, that's when he ratcheted up his interest in the game and the amount of time he spent developing a shot and everything else that went along with being good enough to play in the NBA. And he told a story of how they kind of passed as two ships in the night when Legler, I would assume, was not yet playing for the Bullets at this point, because Larry Bird's last year in the NBA was the 91-92 season. He played in the Olympics barely. His back was really a problem. He couldn't even sit on the bench. He had to lie on the floor, and did play in the on the Dream Team in 92 because they really wanted him to play, and then he announced his retirement a short time later. But these were two guys kind of passing in the night, which I guess would have been Bird's last year and the Tim Legler first year.
It was shooting around a preseason game. I never really caught Larry Bird as a player because he was finishing up. He had back problems. He was about to retire, and I was on the court alone, just he and I, opposite ends of the floor, shooting before a preseason game. I think it was in Hartford, Connecticut, if I am not mistaken. And I'm like, that's Larry Bird down there. We're the only two out there because he went out early. I used to go out early. We're out there shooting. At one point, I kind of drifted to the other end, so we were shooting on the same end of the court, just us and some ball boys. And we shot for a while, and I was making them. He was making them. We're both good shooters. And then he finished, and he walked past me. And as he was walking past me to go to the tunnel to leave the court, he just, without even looking at me or changing the direction of his head, he just said, "Nice shooting." And he just kept walking, and that validated my life. That was all I needed to hear. I probably should have just quit right then and just like, hey, that's all I needed. I'm good.
Yeah. That's before smartphones. Can you imagine if you had that on a smartphone? Maybe that's your ringtone, Larry Bird saying "nice shooting." The legend of Larry Bird, and they still tell these wild stories about him and the trash talking and, how you'd say to a young player, "Now I'm going to go over there in the corner and I'm going to launch this shot with my left hand off my right foot and you're not going to be able to do anything about it." And boom, he would sink it. So that's just another story to add to the legend where he just walks past, says, "Nice shooting." "Yes, sir, Mr. Bird. Yes, sir, Mr. Bird." That's a nice story. The Alex Ovechkin thing. Remember at the end of the season, they had this news conference probably a couple of days after when they clean out the lockers. And Ovechkin had said, I think it was during this season, that he was not going to sign another contract with the Capitals. He's got 1 year left. He wants to finish his career playing in Russia. And they pressed him a little bit on that in the locker clean-out news conference, whether or not he was going to play beyond next season. And he kind of left the door open. It was very unclear what he was going to do. And then Brian McClellan, the team president, had a news conference a few days later, and he was asked about Ovechkin, and he said, we've learned over the years, you never know what's going to happen there. Don't ever count him out. So I think it might depend on how he plays next year. He's going to turn 40 just before the season starts in September. Gordie Howe played until he was 51. I'm not saying that Ovechkin is necessarily going to do that. But if he's at the level this next season as he was this year, I would think he would play beyond that, and I would think they would want him to play. He is pretty much a one-trick pony, but that's okay. He scores goals, and he didn't play as well in that series against Carolina, but I think he's somebody you would want to have around. And for a generation, and maybe even a couple of generations now, they have not known the Capitals without Alex Ovechkin. He is the identity of the team. He's not only by far the greatest player in franchise history in the modern era, because I'm still going to hold out for Walter Johnson and Sammy Baugh, but in the modern era of sports, he's the greatest team athlete in Washington, D.C. So anyway, I don't know why this was, but somebody in the corporate sales department sent out an email to season ticket holders, and it's a good marketing hook in that you want to see the last season of Alex Ovechkin, and if you have tickets to what will be his last home game, if in fact he announces that he's not going to come back for the next season, you would want to have that. So that's a marketing thing. But they said, "Oh yeah, come see Alex Ovechkin in his last season," and then they had to send out a second email like, "Whoa, somebody jumped the gun here. we don't know exactly what he intends to do. But next year will be his 21st season. If there's a 22nd season in Washington, what will that mean? I believe Walter Johnson went 23 or 24, maybe not. Maybe it was less than that. But 21, got to be up. Darryl Green went 20. That was remarkable. But if he does go to 22, that would be a cool thing. We had the wrap up of the spelling bee last night, and the winner was a 13-year-old from Allen, Texas, named Faison Zaki. He had finished second last year. The winning word that he had, and let me look this up. It means enlightenment. It means enlightenment. It's a word that doesn't seem like you would ever use this. It's eclaircissement, and it's spelled ECLIARCISSEMENT. Eclaircissement. I've never come across that word in my life. I've never heard anybody use it, but he was so confident that he didn't ask a single question before spelling it correctly, pumped his fist, and collapsed on the stage after saying the final letter. Great way to end the 100th iteration of the spelling bee, which started in 1925. Didn't start here. The Louisville Courier-Journal invited other newspapers to host spelling bees and send their champions to Washington. For the past 14 years, Scripps has hosted the competition at the Convention Center, which is, down in Oxon Hill, the National Harbor. And I didn't realize pretty decent money for winning it. He won $52,500. Last year he got $25,000. So 2 years earned $77,500. I wonder how many other 13-year-olds outside like the acting world have earned that kind of money. He spent the biggest splurge that he had after winning $25,000 last year, a $1,500 Rubik's Cube with 21 squares on each side. He said he will donate money to charity, which is a nice thing. But who knew there was a $1,500 Rubik's Cube? And now that he's won $52,500, that's a good thing. I guess his parents are in a position to send him to college, and probably he's smart enough to get a scholarship. I'm just guessing. But they had a great run this year. At one stretch, 6 spellers got 28 consecutive words right. There were 3 perfect rounds during the finals. The last time there was a single perfect round was the 2019 spelling bee, which ended in an 8-way tie. But all hail Faison Zaki, the 13-year-old from Allen, Texas, who was the winner of the 100th spelling bee, which was held last night at the National Harbor. Let me finish with this, and I don't know how well you're going to relate to this. I don't know how much time you spent in New York, how much time you've listened to sports radio there, particularly WFAN. But Richard Neer, who I worked with for several years during my time at WFAN, he did weekend mornings for, must be at least 35 years. 35 years he's been a staple on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Richard Neer, and he's done other fill-in at the station. A career radio guy, had a long run at WNEW, big classic rock station in New York. And he's in his 70s now. I'm sure he wasn't doing it for the money. I think he just really enjoyed it and the connection he made, and was terrific at it. And he's anything but a hot take guy. And I guess they want that now because he's being replaced by Joe Benigno. And Joe Benigno was originally Joe from Saddle River, who used to call up with screaming takes about how bad the New York Jets were. And eventually that led him to do an overnight show. And eventually that led him to work with another partner. And they did middays for a long time. They transitioned to the afternoon, and either Benigno retired on his own or was forced out or whatever, but he left. But he's worked his way back in as part-time. And now he's going to take over the weekend mornings. And on my vacations, coming and going to Vermont, I've always listened to Richard Neer do his show on weekend mornings in New York. And I just want to salute him. He was a very nice person to work with. I actually watched the Redskins' last Super Bowl, the only Super Bowl they've been in since 1991. We watched it at his house with my son in a bassinet. And my son is now turning 34 in a few weeks, and And all that time has passed, and Richard Neer is still doing weekend mornings. We did that Sunday morning, and then he invited me over his house for a Super Bowl party where most of the people were rooting for the Buffalo Bills. And when the Redskins started to blow them out, they all left, and we stuck around till the end. But just a person who should be recognized, probably not very much on the national radar, but certainly a household name in New York. And in a business where Stephen A. Smith makes whatever he makes, $20 million a year because of the volume that he produces, in large part to that, here's a guy who just gave you measured takes, watched the games, looked at the numbers, studied, gave opinions, and handled callers very well, and other things that you do on a weekend morning show. Best of luck to Richard Neer, whatever he wants to do going forward. But I guess what he wanted to do, they didn't want him to do anymore. And he's no longer doing weekend mornings at WFAN. Anyway, that's a wrap for me. Bram is coming up next, and I'll see you back here tomorrow morning. Not tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning is Saturday. I don't work Saturdays anymore. I'll see you Monday morning at 9 a.m.